Top 10 riders to look out for at the Vuelta. Alejandro Valverde. Alejandro Valverde of Movistar has finished in the top 5 of the Vuelta GC on no less than 6 occasions, and on one of those, in 2009, he was the outright winner. Last year, after a disappointing Tour de France, Valverde went on to finish second at the Vuelta behind compatriot Alberto Contador, and this year, Valverde yet again has his eyes set on winning his home race. He has a good team to back him up. Eros Kopecky is a great climber who's come into form at just the right time, and Sylvester Schmidt is one of the most reliable mountain domestiques in the peloton. Vincenzo Nibali. Vincenzo Nibali of Astana already has one Grand Tour to his name this year, in the form of the Giro, and after taking a break and having a low-key middle part of the season, he showed that he was getting back towards his best at the recent Vuelta a Burgos. Nibali is, like Valverde, a former winner of this race back in 2010, and is arguably a stronger rider now. Also, like Valverde, he comes with a strong team, many of whom also rode for him at this year's Giro. The one unknown, though, going into the race is how much Nibali is going to put on the line going for the GC and how much he'll hold back with a view to peaking at the World Championships, which takes place in Florence 2 weeks after the Vuelta on a course perfectly suited to the Italian. Joaquim Rodriguez. When will Joaquim Rodriguez win a Grand Tour? He's finished on the podium of all 3 of them in the last 15 months, but he's never stood on the top step. The Vuelta seems tailor-made for him this year, with only one individual time trial and plenty of mountaintop finishes, including some of the shorter, steeper climbs which Pareto favours. Rodriguez's form was far better in the second half of this year's Tour de France than the first, indicating that he should be able to keep his good form through to September. Nobody in this year's race can afford to fade near the end though, with the hardest stage of the race coming on the penultimate day. Sergio Henao. Sky Pro Cycling come into this race with 2 riders capable of a good general classification, but with Rigoberto Urán making the move to Omega Pharma Quick-Step next season, it might be that the British team give more protection to his younger compatriot Sergio Henao. Henao has competed in 2 Giro d'Italia and 1 Vuelta so far in the 2 years that he's raced in the top flight of cycling, and has finished in the top 16 in all of them. His best placing was 9th at last year's Vuelta. At this year's Giro, he rode firstly in support of Brad Wiggins and latterly for Rigoberto Urán, and after a long break, he made his comeback at the Tour of Poland with a respectable 5th place on GC. We could well see Henao make the next step into the top 5 at this Vuelta. Chris Horner. Chris Horner will almost certainly be the oldest participant of this year's race at almost 42 years of age, but strangely, he will probably be one of the freshest. He's only had 14 days of racing on the run-up to this race after his early season was ended abruptly after a crash in the Vuelta a Catalunya. After a long stint of recovery back home in the US, Horner returned to racing at the recent Tour of Utah, where he took a stage win and 2nd overall. His best placing at a Grand Tour was 9th in the 2010 Tour de France, but Horner has often been riding in support of others, whereas at this year's Vuelta, he should have his own opportunities. Carlos Betancur. Colombia as a nation have had their most successful European cycling season for a long time, and that's thanks in part to Carlos Betancur, who finished 5th overall and best young rider at the Giro d'Italia. However, he is a real unknown at this Vuelta, as he hasn't pinned on a number since May. Although Nairo Quintana didn't race between Liège-Bastogne-Liège and the Tour, and it didn't do him any harm, Betancur's racing absence is a full month longer, and only time will tell whether his form is good enough to fight for the podium. One thing is for sure though, if he is on form, the route suits him down to the ground. Ivan Basso. It's been a quiet season for Ivan Basso, who was forced to pull out before the start of this year's Giro at the last minute due to a cyst. It seems like Basso's best years are now behind him, and it's hard to imagine that he'll be able to drop riders like Nibali and Rodriguez in the mountains, but he is incredibly consistent, so don't be surprised to see him knocking on the door of the podium place. Teuvo Boss. In the absence of the other big-name sprinters, ex-track rider Teuvo Boss has a great chance to land his first Grand Tour stage victory. Boss has progressed slowly but surely as a road rider, and in the run-up to the Tour de France he beat Cav, Kittel and Greipel to win a sprint at the Ster ZLM Tour. Boss didn't ride the Tour de France, instead using the Tour of Denmark and Eneco Tour as preparation for his 2nd Vuelta. Thor Hushovd. It's been a tough couple of years for Thor Hushovd. After signing for Team BMC at the start of 2012, his first season with the team was a complete write-off, as he was suffering from the effects of a mystery virus. Things looked to be on the up at the start of this season, when he won a stage at the relatively small Tour de Outvaart in February, but the classic season was another disaster for the Norwegian. However, things have taken a massive upturn in the last part of his season. He won the Norwegian Road Race Championships, then 2 stages at the Tour of Poland, plus 2 stages and the general classification at the inaugural Arctic Race of Norway. Dan Martin. 2013 has by far been the most successful year of Dan Martin's career. An overall win at the Vuelta Catalunya was quickly followed by a win in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He won his first ever stage of the Tour de France a couple of months later and is now looking to perform well at the Vuelta. Whether or not he harbours ambitions for the GC remains to be seen, but a stage win looks like a distinct possibility.
Sammy Sanchez might want to go out with a bang in terms of the fact that Escatel, his team, are finishing at the end of the season. Have you got any more people that you expect to be at the top end of the GC?
Well,